You've put all the work in to your EMT program. You've studied. You've done, maybe you did great, maybe you didn't, but here we are. It's time to take the NREMT exam, and you find out that you failed. So what do? I like to think about, when I'm dealing with a problem, of what are the variables that I can control? Okay, what do I have control over? You find out the grade you failed. You can't control that. That's done. That's over on that first attempt. But let's back up, because prior to taking the exam, you do have some control. And that's where I think we need to start off at looking at. You have control of how you study. You have control of how well you understand the material. You have control of how much time you spend with testing apps, and you have control over your schedule, basically, is where I'm getting at. You have control over what kind of student you're going to be in class. And you also obviously have control of, if you don't understand something, asking for help. All of that is completely controllable up to the point where you take the exam. Then you receive the exam, and hopefully you pass. But what if you don't? What if you fail? Right? Today, I'm going to upload on this video, an interview with Recruit Barker. Recruit Barker in class 117, an exceptional recruit. Exceptional, so exceptional that he was the class leader. He had above average grades, above average. And this is him in this center photo. Like I said, above average grades, great recruit, couldn't ask for a better recruit. And here he is taking the NREMT exam, not once, not twice, but he finds himself staring down the barrel of a third attempt. Now, why is the third attempt here is so important? Because with here at the Fire Academy, 3 test failures, and you're released from the program. 3 test failures. So it could be 3 NREMT test failures, or it could be 3 academic test failures. To say stressful, I don't think it defines it well enough. An extremely stressful situation. And I think what you're going to find in this interview is how he dealt with that stress, how he developed a plan. What was his goals? How did he put it all together, and how did he stay focused? And that was what I wanted to know, obviously, and that's why I did the interview. The instructors, and I think I could speak for all of us here, our goal it's simple. It's to help you to succeed. But it's not to tote you on our back so that you can succeed. We will provide you with all the information possible. We'll go to the end of the world as long as you're trying. But you have to understand something. We're not going to give this to you. This will not be given. The citizens of DeKalb County, they expect us to be trained. They expect us to be able to handle the emergency that they called for. Expect maybe maybe that's not a good word. I think maybe demand. They demand that of us. And that's what we're going to do. I hope you enjoy the interview with Recruit Barker. Look forward to working with you again soon. What do you do when you fail the NREMT twice? So what I want to start with is tell me a little bit about your education, high school. What type of student were you? Anything after high school, what type of student were you when you came into the program?
Yeah, so high school, I guess you'd say I was just an average all-around student. I wouldn't say anything special or anything below average per se. Just your run-of-the-mill average student. Got by, didn't study insanely hard, but got by with good grades. Mostly paid attention in class, didn't do a lot outside. After that, was minimal college and straight on to the Army.
What was your MOS in the Army?
19 Delta Cav Scout, so not a lot of proper education there. More so the education behind that was just training. It was all hands on.
Right.
So then coming here, at 34 years old, a long time out of testing, out of book, classroom learning. So I think was part of the adaptive phase for me, was just getting back into, classroom book based homework, extra effort learning. So for the most part.
Right. And you're a different type of student from me, because all through the program, your test grades were good.
Right.
They were good. You only had one or two exams that you were in the 70s on.
Right.
Most of your exams were you were in the low 80s or above.
Right.
And you seem to be doing well throughout the program. And then we came to the National Registry.
Yeah.
And we came to the first test. So tell me about going into that first test. What did you do to prepare yourself for the first NREMT test? What did you feel about that?
So I would say going into the first NREMT test, to be honest, I didn't put a ton into it. I kind of trusted my process, and like you said, my test scores and that preemptive area up to that. I guess I had a little bit more confidence in that than I thought, or than I should have had. I would say underestimated, or we could even go to the extremes and say abused the amount of free time I probably had during clinicals, which is a given gracious amount of free time that could easily have been put into studying.
Because there was a 2-week period.
2 weeks, yeah.
Leading up to the National Registry that you guys did third rides.
Right.
So about 14 days of just doing your third rides, not reporting to. Well, you reported to the classroom maybe twice,
once
in
a
2
week.
weeks?
Yeah. So yeah, and then you run 3 shifts a week. So essentially, you worked at best. Let's call it 7 days out of 14.
Okay.
So you got a week that you could easily.
Right. You don't have to study really per se. Nobody's on you to make sure that you're studying.
Yeah, it's on you, you know. And so looking back, I really wish I would have approached that differently. Because even an hour a day over 14 hours, that's 14 hours of studying at a bare minimum, an hour a day. Everybody's got an hour a day doing that. So looking back, I really wish I would have took advantage of that. Like I believe a lot of people in our class did, and we're first-time run-of-the-mill guys, went straight through.
All right. So let's take you to the first exam.
Yep.
First National Registry exam. You go in Pearson Testing Center. More than likely feeling pretty confident.
Yeah.
I assume you're a confident person.
Very much so.
And so you go in there and tell me about when you first noticed the oh crap moment where something's not exactly right.
Right. I would say it was less than, to be 100% honest, probably less than 5 questions in.
Really?
It was in the first 5 or 10. I was like, I'm underprepared. But I'm here. But there's no doubt I'm underprepared.
Okay.
And for me, it was a lot of, there's a lot of information in 4 months. It's a lot.
Right.
And especially fresh off the street with no medical background, no medical history, no one in your family in medical. It's a lot to take in. And so for me, that information's got to be fresh. I had to peel back all the way. I knew in the first 5 or 10 questions that there was stuff we did month 1 that I didn't look back over, that I didn't refresh on, and I knew it was coming. In that moment, I'm like, at best, I got at least 65 questions left, and all that. There's stuff coming I don't know or remember. So,
what number did you go to in your first exam?
74.
74.
74, I believe it was. Yeah.
And when you got not your results, but the areas that it said that you either failed or were near fail,
Right.
which areas were those?
I had near on cardiology, but a complete fail on EMS ops. So first one was EMS ops.
Yep.
That was the big thing. And that was, after I thought about everything, that EMS ops is one of the first things.
Yeah.
It's way back. And it's very basic information. It's cut and dry. There's nothing hidden in EMS ops.
Right.
But you gotta refresh on it.
Right. It's not new information.
At all.
I mean, it's not information that you have to wrap your mind around,
Right.
but you have to kind of know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thinking about it now, it's funny. You spent some time letting us know that EMS ops and OB were the two biggest sections that people struggled with.
Right.
And now looking at it, I never struggled with OB. We held OB towards the end.
We did.
We covered it fresh. And as a whole class, as general consensus of the entire class, nobody's really struggled with OB.
Right.
But multiple people have struggled with EMS.
Yeah, EMS
so
ops.
OB's fresh and EMS was not fresh. So
right.
That's really what clicked to me.
So
like
too.
you gotta stroll back over it.
Absolutely.
That white paper was 5 months ago now.
Right.
Right. And so little stuff like that.
Did you use any apps before going to the first exam?
I did. The EMTB prep app.
Okay.
I think a lot was a lot of what we as a class, I think, as what went around. And I learned definitely more about the apps as we progressed. But I didn't do it as nearly as much as I should have.
Okay.
And those apps are really good because it's exactly it. It's scattered information as you're doing those apps, and it helps you refresh here, helps you refresh there, not try to like focal in on something.
Right.
You don't have enough time per se or really want to. You know that you know a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
But you need those apps to pop up things like, oh man, that's really simple, but I didn't remember that, but now I do.
Right.
It's just freshen it back up.
I know talking with you after your first exam,
Yeah.
I thought that on my side of the fence, looking at your grades and everything, I thought that this was more of a bad test day for you, that you had a lot going on. Maybe I know you get frustrated really easy on test questions that you don't know the answer to.
Sure.
And I thought maybe that carried over on some of those questions. And so that's kind of how we looked at it, or at least how I looked at it. Wasn't worried a bit. Tell me what you did after you failed the first exam to prepare for the second exam.
So the following day, I got the results, and I kind of just, I felt defeated, but I felt like I deserved the defeat. I knew I didn't put enough work in. I knew that I needed that stuff fresh on my mind. Like I had previously said, I knew I took advantage of some free time. And so it was good studying. I think going back, I wish I wouldn't have tried to, like I said, focal point what I messed up on so much as get back in those apps and hit that broad range of EMTB prep.
So you think that going from your first test failure, if you had said and not concentrated so much on EMS ops,
absolutely,
and looked at the test as a whole,
right, and
said, you know what, I'm just going to start fresh and pretend like I didn't fail. I failed every one of them.
Right. You failed the test in general.
Yeah. All right. So you go into test 2. You sit down to take the exam, and tell me what happened.
I was pretty confident on test 2. I knew there was things I still was weak on, but I thought I had a pretty good grasp all the way around. Halfway through the test, I started getting hammered cardiology, and I was concerned about that because we know it's an adaptive test. If cardiology keeps popping up, they got me. They found me. So I didn't know where I was going wrong on cardiology, so that was kind of disheartening. And I think that was the determining factor for my second test, and that's where that one went bad.
Okay.
To be honest.
Coming back from test 2, this is when I saw a change.
Yeah.
360
100%.
change. It didn't come from your instructor.
Right.
All right. Because I was blown away. When you told me, when we got the results back that you did pass test 2, I was floored.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you why. There's 2 reasons that somebody fails that test twice.
Right.
One is you just don't have a good understanding of A&P, right, which I thought you did. And 2, you have some type of learning disability, which I know you don't.
Right.
You would have never made the grades you made in this class if you did. So completely, almost to the point where I wanted to call National Registry and say, how do I get this audited?
What's wrong? Yeah.
Because I know this person knows this information, what's going on. As an instructor at this point, I found out a couple of things from this. Was I'm too close, and I could not look at it from an objective point of view.
Right.
I'm way too close because I would have been wrong. If I'd called registry and said,
for sure,
pull his exam, there's something wrong, blah, blah, I would have been wrong. You get the notice that you didn't pass test number 2. I'm floored, and you do something completely radical. Talk about that. Tell me what you did.
Yeah.
How you did it.
So then it was, once I had that second test for you, I knew we were on the edge. So that was very disheartening. Cause I didn't come here to maybe get a job. I'm passionate about seeing this through. So that was a big determining factor for me. And so from then it was just like, okay, I got 2-3 weeks. I got a lot of time on my hands. Let's peel back the layers. Let's peel back the layers and get back to the basics. So, I knew that those apps were there. And so
How did you change your mindset on the apps? Like, did you stay with the same app or did you change apps?
I didn't. I actually changed apps.
What brought that on? What caused that?
For me, it was that app. And so when it comes to these apps, I think a lot of people wanted to hone in on this one because a lot of people were using it. What I've come to find out with the apps, you really got to find the app that works for you.
Okay.
I believe that I don't believe that there's one out there better than the other. I think there's a top 5 maybe that are more so used than a lot. But it's the app that works for you. I mean, the format itself, just the way it's set up, and what your mind allows you to do to gather the information. So for me, it was the EMS Ops app that allowed me to set these tests to 10 or 15 questions. And so that allowed me to set it to 10 or 15 questions. I could set it to that amount of questions. And that allowed me to do, quick little tests in the morning, quick little test on break, on lunch, and just narrow it down so it didn't feel overwhelming. So you take this 120 question test, you miss 30 of them. And by the time you get to 120, you don't want to go back over the 30 you missed.
Right.
Like you're dragging at that point and you're just doing it. Uh-huh. It's in motion. So then you do those 15 question tests, you miss 4 or 5. It's easy to go back over those that you miss, read those explanations, and then move on.
And how many of those tests did you normally do a day?
As far as the amount of tests I did, I'm not 100%. I would say I was taking 4, 5, 6, 7 tests a day, scattered through the day. But over a 3-week period, I cleared through every bit of 2,500 questions.
Really?
I would say between 2,500 and 2,800. I lost track. It just literally became an obsession at that point. Because I knew that I wasn't trying to memorize a question, but I was retaining just the freshness of those apps, and seeing that old info, and reading those explanations at the bottom, and understanding where I was going wrong. I also spent a lot of time on YouTube. There's a lot of great YouTube videos that really reach out and kind of kind of teach you how to take that adaptive test, just to think as your adaptive mode. In that national registry, it took me a couple times to really understand that the questions are not tricks. They're not trying to lead you down the wrong path at all. They want you to know hallmark signs and symptoms. They hone you in. They lead you to the answer, but you got to know how to read and dissect those questions. They're very short. They're to the point, but everything you need is there to have the right answer. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a question at a national base level.
Right.
So,
did the app help you? And if it did, tell me how, to point out the subject material that you were weak on? Or was it a wide range of subject material you were weak on?
It definitely helped point out the subject, as far as where your specific weakness was. Because as I started really clearing through these apps, and that again, back to that EMS Ops app, will show you your weakest subjects, and it breaks down those top 5 NREMT subjects and gives you a percentage based on your questions over these tests. And so as I digging deeper, my question count's getting really high. I'm up into the 500-600s now. I'm seeing that cardiology's low.
Wow.
And so I'm mimicking my second run.
Wow.
So that's what made me come in and ask, hey, I need to retest on A&P. I need to peel back to these basics. And I think that day is when a lot came together for me, unfortunately. That's when I ran into the fact, the embarrassing and all forgiving moment that I had the heart backwards.
Right.
So you learn the heart on the board,
right.
You learn the heart on the book. These questions are based on a patient. That heart is oriented
and what was so
the right
weird
way.
For you is in class you would do it on the board correctly.
100%.
It's when you had to think about it to answer the question that you reversed your thought process.
Reversed it.
Wow.
Correct.
That's amazing. I've never even seen this.
So then it come back to that. It really did. And then I got excited that day.
Yeah.
And, I knew I had found something. So I was excited to get out of here and get back to the app.
Yeah.
So then I just honed straight in on cardiology, and kept getting these hard questions like, oh my gosh, this is so simple now.
Yeah.
But I was backwards the whole time. So that was very motivating. I watched that cardiology score, overall score just skyrocket in a couple days. And then I tucked my head down and just kept doing those apps.
That's amazing.
And just keep pushing. Because I knew if I seen enough, when I got there, I would be ready for that third, just overly prepared.
Right.
And this is a test that you can't underestimate. You can't over prepare for this test, but you sure as hell can under prepare.
Under prepare for sure, right?
For sure.
I know before you went to take the third exam, you already knew you passed before you walked in the door.
100%.
So that was something
100%.
too. And I was thinking, I hope you're not overconfident.
Right.
And then talk to you right after the exam, and you're like, it's done, I passed.
100%.
And that's something that I've only heard from one other student, and that was one of our other students, Willis.
Yeah.
Came back and said the same thing on his second attempt. On his second attempt. It would be awesome if we could prepare all the students so that when they went the first time, they could come back and go, oh, I know I passed, because you never hear that.
Right.
You never, ever hear that. I've gotten used to as an instructor saying, look, say that you failed, but more than likely you probably passed, only because that's how everybody feels.
Right. Everybody.
I'd found out from watching you that you don't have to feel that way.
No, not at all.
As long as you study right.
You have to study, and like I said, if you go all the way back to step number 1, that clinical time comes around, and you got to understand it's time to tuck your head down and get to work. What you do when no one's looking is really where the money's made.
Yeah.
You're going to have a free time. We're all adults here. Right. You're going out to clinicals. You're going out there to learn. But that free time is not just free time. It was set up that way for this program.
Right.
I 100% believe that. And I'm an avid sports fan.
Right.
So it clicked to me that, the greats, Kobe Bryant, shooting thousands of baskets when no one was looking. It was easy for him to go out on the court and perform. He knew what he had. He knew what he had done. So that's where I walked into that third with so much confidence that
number test failure.
Yeah.
And you are already in AEMT school.
Yeah.
We've rolled into that.
For sure.
We've talked about AMP, which the AMP part minus a little bit of cellular anatomy is very doable.
Yep.
But we're in AEMT school.
Absolutely.
You still have tests here to do and all that.
Right.
And you got a wife and a family to take care of as well.
Very much.
How did you manage the stress at home?
So for me, if we get personal, I'll be 100% honest. My wife, originally, I had failed the second time. I've told you this.
And she was involved heavily after the first failure.
Very much so.
I remember you telling me your
she was concerned.
wife was questioning you and had participated in that a little bit.
For the same reason. You've done so well through the course. What's going on?
Right.
So, the second time rolls around, then she gets really in there. So she's upset.
Right.
She's worrying. She knows I'm on the brink, and starts, yapping about plan B.
Right.
What's plan B? What's next after? What happens if you fail this?
Because your wife at the time, you're the breadwinner.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. So that's, unfortunately, as much as it upset her, it helped me a lot. Because I knew there was no plan B. And if you start worrying about plan B, you can go ahead and count A out. Plan A is gone now because your focus is not where it needs to be. So that really helped me hone in because I knew it was time to get it done.
There's an old saying that they say is the obstacle is the way.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
With your plan B thing, that would mean instead of going through the obstacle, you veer around the obstacle.
Right.
And I think that there comes a time in everybody's life where, we'll have some students that will breeze through this.
For sure.
I mean, this 100%. Is no problem from them. But at some point in time in everybody's life, if you continue to challenge yourself, you come to that point in the road where there's that obstacle that you don't hurdle the first time. Right. And there's that time where you have to deal with failure.
Right.
What I mean by this is life-altering failure.
For sure.
I'm not talking about, it could be a class in school if it's your pathway to a career, or it could be something, but we're not talking about something that, I could try again. I'll keep working. This would be life-altering.
For sure.
And so people face this sometimes.
Absolutely.
I think that the way you looked at it, it's hard for people to see.
Yeah.
Because our natural instinct is when our back is against the wall to run. Instead of going through the obstacle and staying with it.
Yeah.
Or we go ahead and say, well, like this is a 3 test failure thing and you're out. Mm-hmm. So when you hit test number 2, people start going, well, this is really test 3, I'm out.
They're starting to panic.
And they start panicking, looking for a plan B, looking for an escape route. But that behavior carries on through your whole life.
For sure.
You'll always do that every time your back's against the wall because that's your escape route.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you worked through that stress.
Yeah.
And I don't know the answer to anybody out there really, other than what you said, just buckle down to get through that stress.
You gotta embrace your back against
because you're by yourself, kind of.
Right.
You lost your support.
Right.
I mean, really.
Yeah.
Your wife is your number one support, and she's like plan B.
Yeah, she's freaking out.
She's telling you,
doing exactly what you as the student don't need to do.
Right. But that's what most will do. And that's most support groups do this.
Absolutely. That's her job. She's she's a wife. She's a mother. She's concerned about the end all be all goal. And that's taking care of a family. But that for me, I just turned it into motivation. I'm definitely one to get excited at the opportunity of proving someone wrong.
Yeah.
So I told her, allow me this time. I'll get it done.
Yeah.
So it's just exciting to, I think one of the biggest things that I would tell anybody is, that first failure, that second failure, you're watching your classmates pass, and you're watching them be excited. And then everybody starts talking about fire again, because that's really where we're all right. We're excited about it. But there comes a point where you just have to embrace that humility. Embracing that humility of those failures made me want to study that much more.
Right.
It was just like I refused to come back and say, hey guys, I failed my third time. This was fun. You have to embrace that humility. And there's guys we got good bonds in these classes over 6 months.
Class does, yeah.
It's a phenomenal class. And these guys stuck with me, man. They embraced it. Hey, what do you need? You want my crash course book?
Right.
Are you on this app? And so but if you don't embrace that humility and you solidify yourself off to the side, it's hard for these guys to embrace it and help you. And that's the whole point of this, is from day one, that's the moral of this story. You're going to build a team.
And it's true to life.
Yeah.
In the fire department, we are the type of people that we don't always have the tool that we need to fix the problem, so we have to create the tool. And our back's against the wall.
Right.
And a lot of times too, you can't go home and tell your loved ones that don't have any training in this field about what you just saw.
Yeah.
Because they can't handle that.
Right.
And so you're dependent upon your team at work.
Absolutely.
And this team really, I think, did support that process.
100%.
So we really were able to show a good example of what this job is really about.
Yeah.
It really is about, you don't always get support from home, but you have to get support at work or you're really in a bad place.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.